Hello and welcome. My name is Ishnur, and today I'm joined by my fellow programmers Shelby Cook, Will Schofield, and Sarah Lapinova to discuss Jafar Panahi's Taxi Tehran. This segment is part of Film East, a Norwich film programming group. As recently as in July 2022, the award winning Iranian filmmaker Jafar Panahi was detained in Tehran and was ordered to serve 6 years in jail. The 6 year prison sentence, in fact, dates back to December 2010 when Panahi was convicted by the Islamic Republic of Iran for allegedly making propaganda films against the regime. He was slapped with a 20-year ban on writing scripts, directing films, giving interviews, or leaving the country with an additional 6 years imprisonment. Panahi flouts this ban on Taxi Tehran in 2015. It may be added, Taxi won the Golden Bear for the best film at the Berlin International Film Festival, but Panahi was not allowed to leave the country to receive it. It is relevant to discuss this movie today due to two reasons. One, the ongoing protests in Iran on the death of Mahsa Amini by the morality police in Tehran, and second, that Panahi is still in prison. These protests have opened up the conversation about change in the ways of regime, and Panahi has been the crusader of the same sentiment for many years. Now, the film opens with Panahi as a cab driver on the streets of Tehran. He listens to the stories, dreams, expectations, and tensions of the passengers. The film begins with a long shot of street in Tehran as seen through the windshield of a taxi with a set of 3 video cameras mounted on the dashboard. The moving taxi becomes a location as well as the studio and an excuse to introduce a variety of characters who are alternately picked up and dropped off. While discussing and debating different issues and problems, these characters throw up different perspectives on Iran, its superstitious societies, its contraband business, its gender biases, its restrictions, etc. These characters have been played by non-actors. The taxi provides a neutral space to have a conversation. As per the rules and regulations of Iran, a man and a woman who are not related to each other through marriage or blood cannot be seen together under one roof in a film. The film Taxi taps into the Iranian filmmaking to tackle political issues while eluding censorship. The limitations put in by the regime after the Iranian Revolution of 1979 became an excuse for the out-of-the-box experimentation in a bid to register the dissent effectively. And Panahi does that rather very successfully. So what did you think of the movie?
I was pleasantly surprised. I Now that I'm thinking about it, I have seen this film. I've seen stills from this film in like film studies books that I've studied before. And so I think I've always knew that this film existed, but I've never seen it. And I was like, oh, it's gonna be like seeing like stills of it. I was like, it's probably gonna be really slow and like, it's gonna be one of those, as they rightfully call him, the neo-realism of Iranian cinema. It's going to be like really kind of boring. And I think it did keep up with its pace very well with all the different changes in the characters coming into the taxi. And it did, but I knew the backstory from Ishnur. And so I guess I wasn't assuming it to be as political as it was, because it was very much making a lot of commentaries on Iranian culture and society, and particularly the censorship of cinema. And I wasn't expecting it to be as profound as it is.
Yeah, I was similar in that I hadn't heard of this movie before at all, and when I kind of looked up a brief kind of description of it online, I thought, oh, okay, this is a very famous creator who has gotten in a lot of trouble with the government and stuff. It's going to be quite strongly political, which it was, but I expected it to be a lot more kind of almost documentary in its style, just sitting down saying, this is this, this is that, whereas it felt a lot more character driven and easy to watch, and simple isn't the right word, but it was very straightforward. It laid things out
Mhm.
very plainly and kind of let you come to a conclusion. And it was so much more inviting than I expected it to be. And so
Yeah.
it was just way, again, fun. Fun's not the right word, but it was just an enjoyable thing to watch.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that if you're not known about the context of this movie, you would have enjoyed it as much as you after knowing the context?
I think you would have been more confused. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
No, that's all right. I agree with you. I think the context is really what makes it, and it made me think of the film Wajida. If you guys have seen it, it's a Saudi Arabian film, and obviously, like, if you don't know the context for that film, it's just that, you know, like a normal film about a young girl who likes riding her bicycle. But if you know the context, it adds so much more to the film, and, you know, it gives you so much food for thought. And yeah, definitely it is what makes the film, and it makes it so profound in that way.
Yeah.
I might kind of disagree slightly in that I do think the context adds a lot to it and really helps it bloom. But I think the individual scenes of him talking to the characters, each of them kind of have their own message to it inbuilt within the film. I think that even if you knew nothing about it, nothing of the context, or even Iran particularly, you would come away having learnt quite a good deal about the society and the various messages that need to be portrayed. Of course, having a greater understanding would help massively, but I think it does have enough in and of itself to kind of carry it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think it was laid out very clear enough that he explained his perspective and what he wanted to say, and he said it. And then adding that context of what the background is, particularly to him as a filmmaker, just enhances sort of what was being said. But I think the most confusing thing, I think, if someone just stumbled upon this movie and was just going to watch it, I think it's the documentary bit of it, because can you explain, do you know, like, Ishnor, if it is set up, correct?
Yes, it's docu-fiction. Yeah, and he had to do it this way because it's also a technique to evade censorship, because he's banned from making movies, writing scripts, or directing or anything. So he mounts these 3 cameras and lets it go.
Yeah.
But
the people who come into his cab are actors.
They're non-actors.
They're
not
they're like,
actors.
Okay.
Yeah. But then there's a lot of confusion regarding that. So people call it docu-fiction, and they're non-actors. They're sometimes not given scripts, sometimes given scripts. Almost all his movies are like that.
And the little girl was his real niece, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, and when this movie got the award at the Berlin Film Festival, the niece went and received it because Jafar could not go because the country didn't let him.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very good clip. I'll send it to you all. I mean, it's beautiful.
That little girl is so charming. She's such a whip fire. Like, she is just like on it. She's like, "You're ruining my film. Go back and put that back."
Yeah, I mean, I think so. What happened with me, that I got introduced to the cinema of Jafar Panahi in 2018 because we have film festivals in Mumbai. And so there was this long queue outside this movie screening called Three Faces, which is also Jafar's movie. And I was like, okay, why are people watching this? And one of my friends said that because the filmmaker is in trouble and he makes these movies and he keeps going to the jail and all of these things. And I was like, okay, why does he go to the jail? And one of my friends, who's very conservative, he said that if he'll make women play football or watch football, what do you expect the authorities to do? And that's what he's saying in India. So then I got intrigued about it and I got curious. I'm like, I'm going to check this person out. So I saw the other movies first, and then I saw Taxi. And because I had the context, I liked it more. And when I tried to show it to my friends, they didn't like it. They were like, we're getting bored. We don't want to watch it. So I'm glad that you liked it. I'm very, very glad about it.
It's definitely a film a person who appreciates film will appreciate this. Because I did watch it with my mom, and I wasn't expecting her to sit through the entire thing because I was expecting her just to be like, this is boring. But she did sit through it. And at the end, she looked at me and she said, okay, explain. And I was just like, oh, okay, well, here's the context behind it. She's like, oh, okay. So, I mean, my mom is, I've trained her to like films more, but she did enjoy it as well.
Yeah, that's nice. So is there any storyline that you particularly liked?
I loved the scene where he encounters like a friend that he hasn't seen in ages, and the friend kind of gets in the taxi and he's like, how have things been with you? And he just starts explaining his whole life and like how everything's been going downhill, and he's started robbing and stuff and this whole thing. And I remember that scene where he's just kind of him explaining. I did get a little bit like bored because it's just him kind of ranting for a little while. But then the next scene, he's driving off with his niece, and she starts explaining all the rules that Iranian cinema has to follow. And then he asks, like, okay, so that guy was I talking to, did it follow those rules? And you kind of think back on the previous scene and you realize, oh, that whole scene was structured to be just ambiguous enough that it technically like loopholes through all of those rules. You can't say like the rules about what protagonists have to be wearing, how they have to act, how they have to say. That guy, he felt like a protagonist because he felt hard to done by, but at the same time, he had the clothes of an antagonist. He had the behavior, the mannerisms of an antagonist and stuff. And yet at the same time, you can't help but feel bad for him and root for him in that story. And I guess just the way it very subtly kind of provided an example and poked holes in that kind of censorship doctrine was just so it took me by complete surprise, and it's the bit that stuck with me the most out of the movie, I think.
And I think that was one of the first things I noticed too, was when they started talking about the censorship, was that guy had a tie on. But now that you put that into perspective, I completely get it now. And that's probably why you said it was so boring, because it was the censored type of cinema that you have to make. And so, yeah, I think that was really brilliant now that you just brought that up.
Yeah. I think I mean, for me, when he meets Nasreen Satode, that's one of my favorite scenes, because that actually says that in the face of so much hardship, people still choose to stand against the regime and they still continue to do these sorts of work. And Nasreen has been sentenced for 38 years in prison for 148 lashes. And it's just been so bad, but she still keeps on going. And both of them meeting, it's also like the artists are standing together against this. And I think this, it's important, like even if you win the battle or not, but it's important to fight. And that's what it stands for. So that impresses me a lot.
I think, I don't know, after Will's comment, I'm like, oh, I don't really think I have any.
Sorry.
Mind, guys, bye. I don't belong here. I'm just gonna go. I think for me, just on like a very simple term, I loved Hannah, and Hannah was such a kind of light in the film. And obviously, the moment you meet her, she's so funny and sassy, and she's just got a lot of personality to add to the film. But also, obviously, she's so young and so passionate about cinema, and she's got the camera in her hand basically the entire time she's in the film, and she just really wants to make a film that can win an award. And I just thought that was really wholesome, and it just really a lovely juxtaposition against all of the horrible bits that they were discussing in the film. And I think, obviously, because she's related to the director as well, it kind of makes his work seem more important in that way, if that makes sense, because she's obviously would be a female filmmaker as well if she were to become a filmmaker. So that's something I thought about a lot, and I just really loved her.
And it was kind of sad too to think about her character, because all she wanted to do was make a movie, and that once she grows up, she's going to be beaten down and she's not going to be able to make a movie unless she moves away. I think one of the scenes, I don't think it was my favorite scene, but one of the scenes that was the most shocking was the one with the bike accident. And it was just, there was so much, particularly with that woman, like crying so aggressively. It was just so intense. And I wasn't expecting that to happen in this like very quiet somber film. And so all of a sudden when they get into the taxi and that woman's just like screaming, and it was so intense, and it was just like really, that took me by surprise. And that, I think that was the scene that really gripped me into the story, because I wasn't expecting that to happen. And so it was already starting to challenge my expectations of what I was going into this film watching.
I feel that Hannah's scene and that bike accident scene, they basically are talking about the intensity with which the censorship is working.
Yeah.
And what is the condition of women, that even if that person is so hurt, but is worried about the wife. And Hannah asking her uncle, who actually, his movies are not distributable in Iran.
Yeah.
It's ironical that she's asking him, how do you make a distributable movie? And then Jafar says that, make a choice. What do you want to do? Do you want to read or do you want to shoot? So make a choice. So I think that also signifies that, make a choice, that what sort of movies that you want to make. So that's sort of prodding her into making that choice. I think that's important. And and talking about censorship, for every storyline, for every shoot, every location, you need to take permits. What Jafar does is that he asks for permits for something that he's not shooting for. And that's how he was getting permits. Like even the hockey, there's this movie Offside, in which women in Iran were not allowed to watch football matches because the men would be very hyped up and they would outrage the modesty of women. To protect women, women were not allowed to watch matches. So what happened was that Jafar told the authorities that he's going to shoot the match. But what he did was that he shot this movie Offside, where this group of women, they go put on dresses like men, they dress up like men, and they go to the football stadium just to watch the match. But they're caught and they cannot watch the match. So that's how he's getting permits. So I think that's really interesting. Hannah asking Jafar, okay, how do I make a distributable movie? And Jafar's like, lie.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, you're asking the wrong person. So is there any scene, according to you, which captures the essence of the film for you? Like,
going back to Will's profound comment, I definitely, now that he said that, that's definitely that scene.
I really like the scene where the niece is in the car, and she just saw the boy on the street steal money from a guy, and then she's begging him, like, return it to him, because that I need it for my movie. That'll be a really important scene, a really emotional scene. And he's explaining, no, I can't do that because I need this money to take care of my sick dad. This money will really help us out, really change us. And she's saying, no, you need to give the money back, and for my film to be effective. And it's almost like she's missing the forest for the trees. She's missing the point. There is a really good, emotional, kind story right in front of her, with the son finding the money to take care of his sick dad, but it doesn't fit within this idea of what a film should be that she has been taught, and so she kind of misses it. And I feel like that's a kind of theme that, I don't know, comes up a lot in regards to, again, the censorship and the restrictions on what a movie should be, almost.
How to reflect the society, to reflect a just society, but not to create a just society. So I in my opinion, that also captures, that scene particularly captures the essence of the film. How do you interpret the ending of the film?
So I originally thought that it was people realizing that he's making a movie, because they say, like, there's no flash drive in here, in like his camera. So that's what I thought. It was like government officials going to steal his movie that he was making. I don't know if anyone else got that interpretation, or if it was just me.
That's what I thought. Yeah, I thought that as well, like, because of the same sentence. But then I wasn't sure. I was kind of sat there and I was, feeling a little bit cynical as to whether they, real thieves have come in, or is it the government, or is it just set up, for the cameras, just so he has some sort of ending. So yeah, I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think.
I think there's definitely, it has to in some way tie back to the beginning of the film, which was the man and the woman debating the ethics of stealing in Iran. And I haven't like sat down and thought about how it parallels, but the fact that the film begins with a debate as to like the severity of stealing, how good it is, what punishment is deserved, and the fact that it ends with the film itself almost being stolen.
Well,
The
I kind
cyclical.
of connected that conversation to all the other people that come into the taxi, because obviously you have the man who pirates the movies and is selling those. Obviously that is a form of stealing, and I think I always saw that like the little boy stealing the money or taking the money off the ground. There was a lot of people who in a way were acting with criminal intent, or not acting with criminal intent, but they were performing criminal activities, but they were doing it in a way so they could survive. And so I sort of interpreted that conversation that was happening in the beginning as you can't judge a book by its cover. I know that's such a cliche to say, but just because someone commits a criminal act doesn't mean they're a bad person. They're just trying to they're just trying to be able to survive.
I agree, Shelby, and I think that there was a specific scene in which they say, like, when they're sat in the car with his friend, the friend with the tie, and he says, oh, that's him. And he says, oh, well, why didn't you tell me? Like, I want to know what he looks like. He's just like, it doesn't matter what he looks like. He looks just like you and me. He looks like everyone else. And then when Hannah gets back in the car, he's trying again. He's like, oh, can you tell me what that juice guy looked like? And she's just like, what do you mean? What does he look like? He looks normal, and it is very much that sentiment of, obviously, a lot of people do things because of necessity and because of circumstance, and that, there's no specific look towards a thief or any other sort of person that we might consider a criminal.
And it was just that innocence of Hannah being like, oh, I really love the guy who was serving the juice. Like, I thought he was such a nice guy. And after we just had that conversation of he, didn't do very good things, but Hannah was so innocent about it. And it just goes to show that at the end of the day, everyone's human. We're all trying to survive the best that we can. It was really grounding it in this sort of humanity.
Yeah. Connecting with this, do you think Jafar is making movies out of necessity? What do you think is his motivation? Why is he making these movies? Is he making these movies to be preachy about something? Or is it to actually show what's happening? I mean,
yeah, I think he's making it out of necessity. I haven't seen a lot of his other films, but I do want to continue onto his filmography and watch more of his films. But I do think he's making it out of necessity because, and that is like a very philosophical question about what art is. Is art supposed to reflect society, particularly with cinema, where you have this ability to reflect back exactly what you see in front of you? Or do you make it into a fiction and make it this fictionalized version of what reality is? I mean, that's what my research deals a lot with, is stereotyping and creating this sort of false narrative of what reality is to make it more palatable for audiences. I mean, you have that conversation with social media, people face tuning and slimming their bodies and doing all that stuff. And that's not the reality of how life is, where you have someone who does go out and just puts up a camera in a taxi and says that it's for security footage, and then that is really just capturing the reality of what is going on and the reality of what living life is like.
I think the fact that we're all sat around here talking about it right now is evidence that it's clearly working in spreading the message, because I personally would have had very little knowledge about whatever's going on in there without this film, and like Shelby said, I'm now a lot more interested in learning more and seeing his other films and other works about it, whereas if this had been like a article online or in a paper, I probably would have just skimmed over it and not read it. I think the format of it is a lot more, and like you yourself, Ishna, said, you didn't know about it until you were walking past and saw his movies at the door and thought, what is this and stuff. And so the fact that I don't know whether it's movies specifically, but there's something about the format of it that is a lot more accessible and inviting, particularly in the wider world outside of Iran, that helps the message be spread. And I don't know whether that is his main goal, but it must be a factor.
Yeah. So what happened with the Iranian Revolution in 1979, that a lot of artists left Iran and they settled in Europe and different countries because they wanted to make art. And so Jafar Panahi used to be an assistant to Abbas Kiarostami, and that's how he started he assisted him in some of his movies. And he was also asked to leave the country if he wants to make movies. And he said that I cannot make movies if I'm not in Iran. I'll only make movies in Iran. And one of the interviews I'd read that he's spoken about his movies, and he said that his movies are timeless and they do not have any expiration date, because when things change in Iran, people can look at these movies and know what exactly the situation was in Iran. So I think that he's making it out of an hope that things are going to change and things will change, and this stays as a document, this stays as a proof of what the society was and how the change has happened. In my opinion, that is the reason he's making movies. I don't think so he's being preachy, because in all the movies that I have watched, mostly he is in those movies. He is in Three Faces, he's in the movie Hidden, and he does not participate. He's there. He's not giving any sermons. He's not saying, okay, you should do this or you should do that. So he's not interfering. He's just letting the people be. And he's just doing his own work. So I don't think so he's being preachy.
I think it's very admirable of him. 'Cause my mom said that, well, why doesn't he just leave Iran? Like, why doesn't he just leave the country? And I think that's very admirable of him, that he isn't going to be smuggled out of the country and go make movies elsewhere. One of the other movies that we talked about on Filmish Chats is A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. And that's an Iranian movie, but it was filmed in Los Angeles. So it has those sort of commentaries about Iranian society. And I never quite understood why it was filmed in Los Angeles, but now I get the context behind it, because that movie, one, it's from a woman filmmaker, so that would have never gone down well. And it does have a lot of those commentaries about living in the slums and the struggle that people in Iran live with every day. And obviously it has violence in it. You can't have the violence in it. And I think it was like, you can't show two a man and a woman touching, or that was one of the censorships too. Yeah. So now it does put that into context. Oh, she made that movie trying to reflect on the society where she comes from, but she had to make it somewhere else. So I really admire him for not leaving and being determined to tell his stories and these stories from the place where he's telling these stories about this place.
Yeah.
He's also a creator, right? So he's a filmmaker, and the fact that he's thinking of, like, loads of different creative ways how to get around the censorship and make movies as well. It's kind of a testament to how well he can do that trade. So yeah.
I mean, so in 2010, he was slapped with these charges of going against the regime. And in 2011, he came out with a film called This Is Not a Film. And it's so interesting. He's sitting at his home, he's having his bread and butter, he's having jam, and he's just talking about, because he's waiting for his verdict to come. And he has his iPhone with him, and he's just shooting outside. His friends are there, they are shooting him. And he's like, okay, they're asking me to not make movies, but I can tell the story. I can tell the movie. I cannot make, so that's also so impressive. So like so he's not scared. He's so brave. And I'm like, wow, we need that.
Yeah. And it really challenges the question of what is a film, because can you just film something on your iPhone and make a movie out of that where there's really no storyline and it's just more of a documentary type of thing? What makes a film? What classifies something as being a work of art?
Okay. Now, I think I can safely say that this film did have an impact on you, but was it the storylines of the characters, or was it Jafar telling those stories? What worked?
I feel like it was the telling of the stories that had the impact, because I feel like you hear these stories all the time, but the fact that it was put into context of like actual people in Iran and in this sort of documentary type of style where it feels like very natural and very like fly on the wall type of conversation. I feel like you can connect to the characters better and connect to the stories better than rather reading something in the New York Times that is completely disassociated from the reality of these people.
I agree. And I don't think this format of making a story would work from any director. You could say that any director could do this, but I don't think it would necessarily have the same impact. And the fact that he obviously so clearly cares about his country, and the fact that he obviously had Hannah involved as well, and he just has a really like calming presence, I think, and like he's like a very specific type of person, the way that he is just an observer in this film, and you often see him kind of smiling when he's driving and when he sees people interacting together as well, and I think that just shows you a lot about him as a person as well, and is obviously a reason that he's able to put this story out and make it as good as it is, if that makes sense.
I found that very profound when, after the man who got hit on the bike left, it cuts away to him wiping his tears away, and sort of that emotion that he had, like, but there's really nothing that he can do about it, and you can feel that emotion that he has for those people and that sorrow that he has, and he wants to be able to help them. And then the guy pirating was just like, oh, well, here's your phone back. It was just like so goofy, like he didn't care at all, like, and it really showed the depths of his character as a real person and how he wants to connect with these people.
Yeah. I think for me, the stories of these characters being in India, I've seen a lot, but what I've not seen, because in India there's also censorship, but what I've not seen is somebody taking risks like this and making movies at the cost of his personal liberty, at the cost of his life. And as we speak today, he's still in prison. In July, he went to ask about his friend, and the guards told him that he has a sentence awarded to him and he has to be in the prison, and he is still in prison. And I think it's important for all of us to tell his story, and it becomes more important and more relevant now to do that.
Hopefully you have enjoyed our brief discussion today. If you're interested in reading more about Jafar Panahi, you can read my article, Taxi Tehran, Jafar Panahi's Cinema of Dissent, on Film East's website. If you're interested in contributing to our film and television blog, visit film-east.com/submissions for more information. To learn more about Film East and what we do, visit our website film-east.com or follow us on any of our social media at films_east. Thank you.